none, I'll call the meeting to order. Susan, could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Dents,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky,
Here.
Ms. Goodman,
Here.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
and Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Is everybody there in person?
Yes,
Yes,
we
everyone
are.
is here in person, even though
Okay.
two are hiding off camera.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of unusual that we've got us all here.
Yeah,
This is the first time in quite a while. Anyway, great, okay. Moving on, everybody's had a chance, or everybody's gotten a copy of the agenda for today's meeting and have had a chance to review it. Any changes, comments, or,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda since there's no changes.
okay, do I hear a second on that?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Public comment, no public here today. I did
I just wanna
understand
make
that
sure
we
that
were gonna have a guest here.
the door opening.
April Sad.
I don't see her, so.
Okay, I was kinda looking forward to having her here because I haven't, never met her.
Who's gonna be here?
April Sad,
Who sent the
the
letters
one that sent the letters to us about the,
that.
and is
right,
continuing to send letters?
Oh, I was gonna ask about her because I had a message on my answering machine from her, and I returned the call, her answer machine, and heard nothing else, so I wondered if anybody else had.
I did the same thing. I got a message from her on my phone, and this goes back probably about 3 weeks now. And I was debating as to what I should do, but I did go ahead and put a call back to her. There was no answer. I left a message.
Same thing I did.
And I waited a couple of days and I did it again.
I talked to her.
You talked,
Yep.
that's right. I think someplace or another, oh, Barry, you said Karen talked to her. So anyway, I was kind of looking forward to having her here this morning for a few minutes.
She
Anyway,
came out and I spoke with her for probably a half hour last week and invited her to come today if she
Okay.
wanted to.
well, the door's open for her.
What is her position? I mean, what is her position when you talk to her? What's her, her big beef? Or is it gone or resolved, or what is she
It
saying?
is not, my opinion after the conversation is she doesn't want any aircraft flying over her house.
She has no control over that.
After she talked with me, she called the FAA in Grand Rapids and they communicated that to her as well, and they had followed up with me along those same lines.
Good.
But she believes that she is going to pressure County Board of Commissioners to get the airport authority to change its mind. So,
I told her, it says it's airspace, you know, we really can't regulate, you know, plus also, it's the tours, she thinks that the tours are, you know, over her house. I live right across the fields from her, you know, and it's like, it's just not a big deal, you know, but she's determined, she's obviously got, some, you know, a telescope or whatever, you know, so she says it's a blue and white plane, and I says, well, Cape Air is blue and white, and I really think Cape Air might come across in that direction.
Times that would
Yeah.
be the case.
And it's
Yeah.
like,
Depends on the wind.
there's nothing we're gonna do about that, you know, and it is their route, 'cause they come right off the back of my house, which would be right over hers, so nothing I'm gonna do about that. The tours, I told her that you were being very accommodating by saying that you were gonna change the location of where you do your tours.
And to give an update on that, my main pilot, I had that conversation with, and he adjusted his route, but I secondary pilot that only flies a couple days a week, I hadn't had that conversation with. So so he was still, flying a path that was nearer to her house, and that, I think, is what
Not
led her
like
to.
It's kind of a,
But I have a concern if we were to, we being, you know, speak with airport's, manager, were to try to get, you know, everybody to avoid, that then opens us up to basically
Mhm.
setting a precedent, and now the next person that complains, and at some point, you can't not accommodate every single person who might prefer that not to happen.
The
So-
thing that she said was, she said, I don't care if they're over my barn, over my field, I don't want them over the house. I don't,
That's very difficult to do when you're 1,000 feet up.
well, I just don't understand what the issue is there, but she made that comment, and that's when I told her about airspace and FAA and all that stuff. It's like, you know, not much we're gonna do, and I told her, I think you're also here in Cape Air, and that is our major airline that's coming in, and,
Anybody
you know,
else that happens to fly down
Correct.
the coastline,
Correct.
too bad.
well, she complained when the president's helicopters were up and down the coastline a couple months ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
And she must complain when the Coast Guard comes out here flying and,
and they've been out doing maneuvers.
right.
So, I just, you know, so I just kinda listened to her and kinda remind her about the same thing that you were saying, you and I talked, and so I just repeat that. And, you know, it happened she called me again at the beginning of last week, and it's like, it's happened 2 more times.
Okay, enough said on that subject for right now. Let's move on. Next item is the minutes for the September meeting. I assume everybody has gotten that, had a chance to review it. And, if there's any changes, comments, we'll move forward. The only thing I've got, Susan, is that Appendix G. It's kind of confusing for me. This last Appendix G that you added on there,
I think Julie put
Julie?
the minutes
Okay,
together.
okay. But anyway, there's no, totals for revenues, expenditures, and, we're not matching even what we got handed out for year-to-date expenses for September 30 year-to-date. So maybe next time around, we'll get it cleaned up. Have a good one. Susan?
Sure.
Okay,
I'll
thank
have
you.
to look at it, 'cause I guess I don't know what you're referring.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's the budget
right.
printout.
It has no summary of revenues, et cetera. It's just kind of thrown there.
Okay, all right.
And year-to-date numbers for September 30th, 2021 don't match what you sent out to us.
Well, they
Uh,
won't match, because those change once you pay accounts payable and things like that.
Okay,
And then as you receive revenue, and then I also had to book revenue that we got in October for September, so yes, that, when I present that report, that's a snapshot in time as of that date when I run that stuff. So things
Okay.
change, like if something got, put into a different line item, I'll do a journal entry to fix that, so those numbers won't, I mean, they'll be close, but they won't match.
So,
I will read you the budget, so you guys have a total at the bottom of those lines. And clean that up a little bit for you and just stick it, I guess, in my next, financial report for next month for you.
okay, if you would do that, that'd be appreciated.
I can do that, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Those in favor, say aye.
Who's second?
Oh, second, okay. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Moving on to the treasurer's report. First item up is the September 2021 accounts payable. And, we have quite a few items on there this time, I noticed. Any questions, comments? I do have one, Mary, on the repair of the skid meter leaking. Was that one of the tests for our field tests out here, that they found was, the old one was leaking?
Yes,
Made a repair on it?
yes.
That's good. Good that they found the repair and, corrected it. And the T-hanger, I mean, not the T-hanger, but for the, hanger for Cape Air,
Mm-hmm.
the auto locking is completed.
Yep.
Seems to be working okay.
Very
Good,
Yep.
okay. Anything else, folks? If not, could I have a motion to approve the accounts payable, September 2021 accounts payable as presented?
So moved by Don's.
Okay. Seconded?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we do a roll call? Yeah, let's do a roll call on this, Susan.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes,
Ms. Kaminsky,
Yes,
Ms. Goodman,
Yes,
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item up is the, financial statement, revenues and expenses, and, trial balance sheet, as well as the other added items for rent and, fuel sales. Everybody's has gotten a copy and has had a chance to review it. Any comments, questions?
Barry, I'm guessing obviously this is somewhat unusual, the fuel sales, since we're at 168%, having an airline buy as much as they've been buying.
I mean, yes, and I mean, it is unusual, but it is what we should expect, and plan for while we have Cape Air operating.
I think, it's actually, I think it's better than what I think we anticipated last year when we put it in the budget, when we upped it
We
last year.
increased
Right.
the number in the budget, and
Right.
it ended up being,
It went up to the 13,000, as you see in the original budget. I think originally we were just somewhere around 10 or less. And we added that up there, but it's moved up much better than anticipated. Now, one thing I noticed, on this budget here, is that, our year-to-date balance on our budget costs and revenues versus what we budgeted, it's only $153 difference. That's a pretty doggone good budget in my mind.
we're lucky there.
Well, I don't know.
That's-
It's a very, very close budget. And even down below on expenditures, we're only 4,000 difference there. I know we still need some adjustments, for Susan and so on, but it's pretty doggone close for an annual budget. Anyway, enough of my comments. Any other comments?
Well, I guess I'll just add, and Susan can chime in and correct me if I misstate anything. This is essentially the end of our fiscal year. As Susan says, this is a snapshot in time. As things kind of come in after, September 30th, depending on what they are and when they are, they'll get rolled back into, the appropriate fiscal year period. So these numbers are going to shift, and when the audit happens, that's kind of when everything kind of comes together with the final, end of year, statement. Some of the things most of the changes that are yet to occur, I think will be to the positive. So, you'll see that right now, the total is a loss for the year of $57,000. We've got outstanding reimbursements with the state for $50,000 for PFAS. I I have a check here of $10,000 from the state marketing grant, and I think we still have the outstanding reimbursement from, the revenue sharing for the camera system, that's about $10,000. So there's anticipated about $70,000 of income still yet to come in from these grant reimbursements.
So Barry,
which will
when you say the $10,000 from the revenue sharing board, what is that? Is that for the? Cause we
for the
got,
Cameras.
we got that grant, we already paid for it.
Yep.
That actually does not go into the airport line, it goes into, the county line item. I did,
Okay.
so the report's
don't
there.
even-
Right,
don't
so the
even run
report's
that.
there. The report's there that we purchased it, installed it, it's all done. So I submitted it back to the county. That's what that is.
Okay, so you don't even run that grant through the airport books?
Right,
Because it's been awarded to essentially the county. Okay,
right.
so then take that $10,000 away.
Oh, that's still not bad, Barry, not bad.
So $60,000 of anticipated revenue. So, we should end the year, once everything wraps up, basically being at a break even.
Okay. If no other comments, could I have a motion to approve the September 2020 revenue and expenses and trial balance sheet and other attached items as presented?
So moved by Dunce.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay,
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Bill did.
All right, thank you.
Susan, a roll call, please?
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Dantz,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes,
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, committee reports and discussion, et cetera. We had no executive committee since the last meeting, no budget committee since the last meeting, and no capital projects committee meeting since the last meeting. So moving on, airport director's report. Barry, the floor is yours.
Okay, so walking through my report. So normally this first item is empty, accidents, incidents, but we did have a minor, incident involving an airline flight last week. The late evening arrival, I think that was Tuesday or Wednesday, blew a tire on landing. The aircraft was disabled then on the runway, so we had to close the runway, shuttle passengers off, and get maintenance to come in and repair so we could actually move the aircraft off the runway before morning flight, so we could get flights out in the morning. A little bit of excitement, but in the scope of things, a very common type of thing to happen.
But no bruises or
Nope,
anything?
nope.
Good.
What aircraft was that, Tecum or is it?
It was a Tecum, yes. The local revenue sharing grant project, that is now completed, so we have all the cameras installed and working. The hangar electrical project, last week I finally got through to someone at Consumers who could understand what we were trying to accomplish. They got the necessary stuff entered into their system. The contractor is now working with Consumers to schedule that project. As was mentioned in the financials, the hangar door auto latch release system, that installation completed, in the last month. And something that, didn't really understand at the time was as significant as it was, but about a month ago, I think just after our last board meeting, it might have even been just before, we had a lightning strike out here on the airfield, and at the time, knew we took out a couple of, runway, taxiway lights, but in the interim, we're discovering more and more things that have been affected. So there's going to be a series of tears that are coming through as a result of this lightning strike that we took here. So there'll be a little bit higher maintenance costs or repair costs over the next probably 60 days as we're ordering parts and getting them installed.
Is there a particular contract you need for this, or special one, or just the electrical
Our
contractor?
our general
Okay.
contractor that we use has been doing the work, but we, on the approach lights, the PAPIs on, that we own, there are 4 sets, and of those, 1 on each runway, we own 3, and the FAA owns 1, but one of ours lost a board, so it was only working during the daytime. It wasn't working properly at night. The runway end indicator lights, the reels, they were out. The light on the windsock was out. There's one other thing. All of these things are like, as things get more complicated, they're all boards that gotta be replaced as opposed to just bulbs and so working through identifying those parts and getting that done, so.
So these things you mentioned, do they put the airport out of business?
No,
Okay,
but they do need to be
right.
notified so people flying in are aware of
Okay.
what is and is not currently working.
Barry, just out of curiosity, how long do you archive your filming with the new cameras?
30 days right now.
Does the airport have any sort of insurance or deductible for lightning strikes?
In the past, we have claimed, insurance on that. I probably would have this time if I had realized at the beginning what was all done, but because it kind of filtered in, I did not this time. And I probably still could go back and, put in a claim on that. But at some point, the more claims we have, it's gonna impact our rates. So I'm comfortable with this one being handled locally, since probably 2 years ago that we had a lightning strike and similar set of issues, and we did file a claim on all of those items.
Jeff, you were asking about the camera and the history or the length of time you save them for 30 days. Is there any significance to that? Should we do more?
No, I just was
Just curious?
curious.
Okay.
That question, though, reminds me of something I've kind of wanted to ask, and probably for the commissioners or maybe Mr. Gentili, is do your organizations have written plans, or not plans is the wrong word, procedures as to under what circumstances that can be accessed and by whom, and can people request, and under what circumstances do you fill those requests? Right now, we have no procedures on that since it's a new system and it's new to us, and I was curious if the county had anything like that.
For repairs?
No, for,
Somebody
let's say
requested
TSA had a claim of something being stolen out of a bag, and they say, can we look at the video of this day?
Right.
Can I do that and provide that to them or not, and under what circumstances?
MMRMA, who we deal with at mental health, has only certain people, myself and our CFO are the 2 people are the contact persons. So anything that goes, like if I have to file anything with MMRMA, then it's me or Donna.
But
That's their-
under what circumstances do you provide video footage of something?
Can they FOIA that?
Well, yeah, they could. We have policies and procedures that protect
And
videos
we
and
don't
stuff like
have
that, yeah.
any policy or procedure on that, and I was just curious if there is
I
a
don't-
simple one that
I don't think there's
would
one
be
at the county.
appropriate for us.
I would ask one of our like-sized airports if they have one, or go up to the first one that has one to see what they've got, just so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
Or MMRMA, they'll consult with it too. Ask through Lisa or something.
Okay.
Do you have any policies and procedures? But
Is there any camera system at the administration courthouse building? And so,
I have not seen a
The school's
policy on
got
it.
one, I don't know
Yeah.
what their procedures are.
I don't know how long it's archived,
okay,
but we did have one incident a few years ago with somebody nicking their finger and having quite a high level of concern about it, so, at any rate.
Actually, the jail too. I'm sure they have a lot of, they have new procedures that they've put forth. They've all been redone, and I know they have video surveillance, so that might be a place where you could get a good one.
I'll start with Lisa internally, but also reach out maybe to a couple other airports and see. Thank you.
Good idea.
Moving on then, so passenger numbers. So for September, we had a total number of passengers of 1,052, which is actually a very good number for September. And later in my report, I'll kind of show you kind of where it fits into kind of historic numbers for the month of September. But overall, the airline did very good on providing service to a lot of passengers. They probably could be doing better if they wouldn't be canceling 10% of their flights. So that's now 2 months in a row. This month, we might be, continuing that trend. We're not quite at 10% right now, but there's still more than a third of the month left. So while the planes are full when they operate, there's, still the same pattern that we're seeing and I've been talking about the last couple months. I had my monthly call with Cape Air this morning, and they are struggling on two fronts. One is they are seeing a much higher than anticipated attrition rate for their pilots, as their pilots are being hired away by larger airlines. They've been anticipating that, but it is happening at a faster rate. I think some of the things you're hearing in the press, like Southwest melting down, that's part of those issues as well. As the industry is ramping back up, and there was a shortage of pilots before the pandemic, then there was a surplus because no one was flying, but now as they ramp back up, that shortage is now even worse than it was 2 years ago, because some people left the industry because they didn't have jobs in it and found other careers, and now there's even a greater shortage.
Phil, there's an opportunity for you.
Yes, of course it is.
So, that, and then still as they say, the teething issues on the Technim are, still happening. They are finally getting the traction they have wanted and the attention they wanted from Lycoming, the engine manufacturer. The correct people within that organization are now engaged, so they feel better about that, but issues are not gone yet. So that's, some of my updates. Internally, Cape Air is meeting tomorrow to reevaluate all of their flying, because right now about half of their flying is contractual EAS routes and about half is their own routes. and they're looking at different ways of scaling back some of their own flying to make sure that they have enough crews for their contractual EAS routes. So they are working on solutions to the problems that they're being developed.
Because that was a problem we ran into with public charters, shortage of pilots.
It's been an industry issue for at least a decade. There's been these blips that have kind of delayed the impact somewhat, but I think we're now entering a time period where we're really gonna see it.
And I think one of the things we did when we interviewed these folks was quiz them as to how they're going to
Yep.
look at adjustments and filling for pilots and so on, and what they told us, it sounded pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we're still ahead of the game, but it's starting to catch up a little bit. Right.
I think is that the reason for a lot of the cancellations in the last few weeks?
There's three issues from my perspective, and, not all of this is necessarily fact-based, it's somewhat some of the things I'm hearing. But there have been weather issues in O'Hare, and this is something that we've noticed in March and April, and we're seeing it again, and it's kind of a seasonal thing as the weather patterns change. If we have strong north or south winds going, into O'Hare, their main runways are east-west. And unless the winds are really strong north-south, they will not change and start using their north-south runways. The north-south runways don't have the capacity that their east-west do. Cape Air, small aircraft, it cannot handle the crosswinds that a larger aircraft can handle. So if you have a strong north wind, it may not be strong enough for O'Hare to switch their runway direction, but it's enough to prevent Cape Air from going in. Part of my conversation with Andrew this morning, and actually I mentioned it later in my report, is they are looking at having a secondary airport in the area, whether that be Schaumburg or Chicago Executive, that they will divert into in these types of scenarios, and then have ground transportation that gets people into O'Hare so that they're not canceling flights because of these winds, but they're less than ideal, but at least people are able to get to their destination as opposed to their flight being canceled. And with the number of passengers that we're doing right now, for example, yesterday, 5 flights on a Sunday, our last Sunday of 5 flights, every single one of our outbound flights was sold out. And they canceled one of those flights, so there's no place for those people to go because every flight's canceled. So when you're doing well, filling seats, you don't have any means of easily recovering other than sending people up to Traverse City and putting them in American or United. So some of the things there. But Cape Air is now evaluating because they've now got a year's worth of data since they've just finished a year of service here, and they basically have the information as to how many flights were canceled because of that reason, to then see that it's justified to deal with the logistics of the ground transportation and coordination.
What are your other, so there, you think there was 3 things that were contributing?
Sorry, yes. So 1 being weather, 2 being mechanical issues, and then 3, I would say it's a side effect of the attrition of their pilots. I would say we have a pilot that is based on our routes who's leaving the company in a couple weeks, and he has no incentive to fly. So he's using a lot of sick days, he's using a lot of reasons not to fly. That's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not professional in my opinion, but there's limited what we can do. As we kind of know from last winter, when we had a crew member who had different types of issues that the company was working through, trying to manage that situation with the union involved, it takes a lot, and someone only got a few weeks left in their time with the company, that process just isn't gonna, lead to time period.
Right.
So, again, so those are the three reasons recently that I'm aware of. And that third one is more hearsay from what I'm hearing, because my impression.
Sunday was the last day for the season for 5 flights. We're down to 3 a day now.
We will be 2 a day starting the 21st.
Okay.
That's Wednesday or Thursday.
Weekends will be how many?
It's 2 a day.
2 a day, period?
Every day.
And even through Christmas,
Yep.
Thanksgiving?
Yep. Looking at airfares. There we go. So our airfare report for the month, very similar to last month. So the Manistee, Traverse City are about at the same place. We each, moved about $12 or $13 from last month. We're within, $5 of each other on average. About $35, $40 more on average than Grand Rapids, but significantly less than Muskegon. There are some destinations where Manistee was the least expensive, some were Traverse City, most out of Grand Rapids. So that, the difference between, Grand Rapids, us and Traverse City is fairly compact, which is good, which we want. Part of this is driven by the fact that 3 to 4 weeks ago, K-Fair adjusted their pricing, and basically for the rest of this calendar year, every seat is $59 each way. So the escalating pricing that we normally see, whereas the plane fills up, it gets more expensive. They've, eliminated that, a flat rate, $59. Part of that was to fill seats in kind of our shoulder here, because we have the same capacity as we have in July and August. We don't have the same demand, mid-September through mid-October as we have in July and August. So they were testing the ability to fill seats by lowering fares. That has worked very well, as, I just had mentioned earlier about every flight this Sunday, going out was sold out. And for every flight coming in on Thursday and most on Friday were sold out coming in. So that has worked, but that helps with these interline fares because you're pairing fare out of Chicago with a lower fare out of Manistee. That's where airfares stand. I have not had any further conversations with the Sheriff's Department on updated staffing and coverage here. That's not something that's pressing right now, but it will be probably soon, so I need to move that forward. All of the state fuel farm inspection items have been completed, and we saw one of those items on the accounts receivable, or accounts payable, I should say. The Manistee Township master plan is going to a public hearing next month. And once that public hearing is done, then a final approval at the planning commission, and I believe they're gonna approve it at the, township board level. Those will happen either in the November or December meeting. So the grants that we have theoretically been awarded, as a result of COVID recovery rounds of grant cycles, round 2, which now was, I think, in December when that was actually passed at the federal level. We're still waiting on that. That was being held up by the state budgeting process as part of the state's fiscal year 2022 budget. The necessary state appropriations for those grants have been incorporated into the state budget. So last week I had been informed that MDOT is working on getting those grants now out to all of the airports. Our share of that round is going to be $13,000. Round 3 of grants, which were, I'm not sure when that was that March? That went through the federal approval process. The state has to do the same thing. They have to do, the state legislature has to approve an appropriation so that the MDOT can award those funds. That's currently not on anybody's high priority agenda yet. So I don't know when that round 3 set of grants will work its way through the system. Our share on that, I want to say, is going to be $30-some thousand. So we've got a good amount of money that's not in our budget through these 2 grants that I'm very sure that in round 2 we'll see this fiscal year. Round 3, since we're in October at the beginning of the fiscal year, we certainly should see it by the end, but I can't necessarily make promises on that given the pace of these bureaucracies and how these processes move. But still, that will be a positive to our budget. So last month I had mentioned some of the things that came out of our airfield inspection. The first due item on that was tree and brush clearing inside the runway safety area, and there was a 9:30 deadline for that. We accomplished what we needed to do, and that item closed out. The next item is the end of this month, which is a bigger tree clearing project in the object-free area. We made some good progress on that last week, and this week and next week, the last 2 weeks of the month, we will wrap that project up. A week ago, I had our annual meeting with MDOT, called the MAP meeting, and I don't even know what that acronym stands for. It's basically where we work through with MDOT our 5 to 10 year federal capital improvement plan. Nothing really moved that much. The plan has us doing a very significant project. It is currently scheduled for 2024, which is going to be $7 to $9 million of completely reconstructing our main taxiway, lighting replacement, reconfiguration of how one accesses the ramp out to the runways. Basically starts with the reconstruction of the taxiway, and then that requires that everything else be brought up to current standards, and that just has kind of this sprawling kind of side effect. That has been on our plan now in that time period for about 3 or 4 years, and the fact that it's not moving gives me some confidence that the funding from the FAA is gonna line up to make that happen, because that's, with that large of a project, there's no way we or the state can fund it with the monies that we get. That has to be called a discretionary grant, from the FAA. One little wrinkle in this is one of the items out of the inspection was a requirement to look at the grading of basically the area around our runway. When our runway was constructed in the late 90s, the standards were what they were. The standards are now different 20-plus years later, and we're basically being asked to bring that grading up to standard. That looks like it could be about $1 million project, and in working with the state, they're looking to try to fit that into 2023, even though the funding requests for 2023 have all really kind of been put in place already through the FAA. Given this is coming from the FAA inspector and the priority of it, they feel confident that they can get that into the queue, and it will get funded in 2023. So the next year is really focused on the design work with our consultants for these larger projects, so that we have basically designs ready to go when the funding gets approved for these projects. Now, if certain federal infrastructure programs that have dollars for airports get approved this year, that might move some of this up or not, depending on how fast we can get designs completed.
One thing, going back, the tree clearing deadline for 10/30.
Yes.
You feel confident you're gonna make that, or do you need some outside help? If you do, I was gonna say, go forward with it.
I feel confident that we will come to a resolution with the FAA. Part of that resolution may be acknowledgement for the work that we did get done, and then an extension on some other
Okay.
things. The area that what's inside our fence, I'm confident that we'll be able to do. The area outside our fence it would definitely qualify as wetlands.
Okay,
And if it's something that we can't do by hand, we probably couldn't get equipment in to do it, just because it is wetlands, until we had basically hard freezes that basically froze up that area so that they were not disturbing the wetlands.
okay.
So, but, it's the farther area, and I think we can do it, because we only need to basically deal with the highest trees
Okay.
in that area. Any other questions?
Well, I guess, one question I would have in regard to reconstruction of the taxiway. We get variance off to where we can utilize the runway strictly and still be in business, or do we have to shut down because the taxiway's out?
I'm pretty sure we'll be able to continue operating during most of that project. I can't say there won't be maybe some days, but it won't be like the 10 days where we were resurfacing the runway. We will definitely work to be maintaining service to the extent possible. But we really haven't had those conversations yet. But my experience from when we did the runway, just knowing how, because we have commercial air service, we're basically allowed to spend more money to keep things open. It costs more to accommodate.
Well, I'm a simple farm boy, and I fail to recognize the need for a taxiway in a small rural airport to begin with. I think it's absolutely idiotic. It's always gonna be, I'm always gonna feel that way, and there's no one's gonna change my mind on it. It's nonsense. You know, we're not busy enough.
Gotta keep those grass blades and stuff from growing there, you gotta keep it contained.
Anyway,
It's all about following the standards.
yeah. Well, one size fits all.
Pretty much. On here, I don't really have much to update. The airport layout plan, which has been our, ongoing project with their consultant this year, is continuing. They're anticipating wrapping that up before the end of the calendar year. Then it has to go through state approval, which may take a few more months after that. But that's moving forward. The PFAS testing project and the grant on that, as was mentioned in the financials, we've submitted our first reimbursement that basically covered the expenses we incurred last fiscal year. Phase 2 right now is being scheduled for November. I don't yet have a date on that, but that's when the subcontractor is looking to do the work. And that grant needs to be closed out by April. A lot of this I've already covered. You know, Cape Air performance, we've talked about probably significantly enough already. We talked about those bullet points. So I mentioned this, but here are the numbers. So for September, 1,052 passengers. That equates to our second best September in our approximately 60 years of service with commercial service here. 2011 was Frontier. 2021 now is Cape Air. Then you're basically going back to 1968 and 1972, which would have been North Central at that point in time, early in air service here at Manistee. And then number 5 on that list is 2017, which was our previous carrier, Public Charters, North Country Sky, did 951. So, you know, Cape Air, in spite of the challenges they are working through, is delivering good passenger numbers, and only things could be ideal and perfect, and we could inch that up a little bit more. October, right now, we're at just about 1,000 passengers, so it'll be pretty much mirror image, I think, to September. Although the comparison numbers are probably about 100 passengers less in the years, so the percentage increase over previous Octobers will be a little bit bigger. I mentioned this already, the off-season schedule starts later this week on the 21st, and all fares through the end of the year currently right now are $59 each way. On the marketing side, we have ramped up fully our marketing efforts. We kind of took a little bit of a hiatus in the summer because we really didn't have more seats to be filling. But now with the $59 fares, our email, social, and digital marketing campaigns are all running again, and we continue to meet bi-weekly with Cape Air and coordinating our efforts. That is my report.
But we will definitely hit 8,000 employments.
We will not.
How not? We're at 7.
Right, if we do the same as we did this month.
Employments are just those that board here. So those are total passengers. So we will get about 5,500 employments.
So your first, it says employment deplaned.
Yeah.
And it's 7782. Now, that's not the persons, that's
Total,
Step on, step off.
yes. So if you totaled up just that first set of numbers in the enplane, that would be enplanements. So we are going to do better than any previous year except, Frontier year, but we will not be at 8,000.
Being here for a year, how does Cape Air look at their future here? What do you think? Are they happy, or are they?
They're not happy that they're not performing. I mean, they're saying the right things, as one would expect of someone who's not delivering, on all of their promises. But I think they are pleased with how the market has responded to the service that they are providing when they are providing it well.
Is this market usual with other airports our size? I mean, the pilot shortage is hitting everybody.
That's gonna be hitting everybody. Well, it's gonna be, generally, one would expect that American United, Southwest, Delta, they're going to suck up all the pilots.
Right.
So it's the regional carriers that are gonna be struggling. Even the regional carriers for those carriers
Right.
are going to be struggling. And then you've got the smaller ones, so that's who's gonna be impacted. It's not likely that Delta's gonna have a pilot shortage, it's just they're gonna cause others to have severe shortages.
So a year from now,
Right,
you know, we
well,
go out to bids again. I
yeah.
guess my
So,
question is, are they optimistic as to?
so how I'll answer that is, I have, since I met with Andrew this morning, I invited him to join us next month, to kind of give us a end of the first year, update, and have the opportunity to ask him all of those questions directly next month.
Sounds good.
I guess for my own self, you know, since I've been on the board, this is the first carrier that has actually had communication, you know, and has a plan and tries to do satisfactory stuff.
Our last carrier, we had good communication, they just did not have resources to execute. Cape Air has good communication, they have more resources, but they're struggling to execute for different reasons. So it's somewhat frustrating that I'm seeing same pattern of promises that then can't be fulfilled, but, I understand the reasons, but at some point, but what other options do we have, will we have, how does it all play out?
The analysis would be more on their level, but for us, we are not throwing any roadblocks in there. We are not causing any difficulties.
I don't think we are, and if we are, it's probably my fault, so that would actually be a good question to ask them, because oblivious to something that I'm stepping in the way of and could improve on our side.
Well, if nothing else, I think the question, one of the chicken and egg questions we had was plane versus scheduling. Which one has a bigger impact? I think this shows us that connectivity and that ability to check your bag here and not worry about it till you get to your destination, final destination.
That's a big one.
That's the monster.
Have to agree there, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we all had concerns about the plane, and the plane is causing issues, but the numbers are up significantly, and it's because of the connectivity.
The numbers are up significantly in the shoulder seasons, so May, June, September, October, where we have that summer level of capacity and traditionally not as much demand. But our numbers in July and August were down because even if we fill every seat, we can't meet the demand. So that's something I've already kind of mentioned to them is, you know, I think in the next round of bidding, they have to address that because that's going to grow and get 8,000 enplanements. We have to be flying enough planes when the demand is there.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we can do things to stimulate demand the rest of the year, but when you know you've got more people than you can handle, you know, getting enough capacity at that peak, is important.
Have they talked at all about getting any larger aircraft, or no, are they just sticking with I know they got those new planes that they're having issues with.
They are not planning on anything larger because the way the regulations work is if they go larger, then they're in a whole different realm of regulations.
Okay.
So there's like basically 9 and under is, you can do, it's called Part 135. So for example, Cape Air can hire a first officer with 500 hours of time, technically even less than that, and that's allowed under 135. Got more than 9 seats, at a minimum, you have to have 1,500 hours. And that's one of the things that's creating this pilot shortage is there's this barrier to entry for new pilots of how do you get 1,500 hours so that you can work for an airline? Because there are just there are not enough jobs out there in aviation to build time that will meet the demand of basically all the retirements that are going on at the other end of the spectrum. So they would place themselves in a much more difficult situation if they tried to operate larger airplanes because they would be at the very bottom of the pilot shortage. Whereas right now, they actually have the benefit of they can employ people and use them to build hours, and there's kind of a stepping stone into the other airlines.
So their pilots are in the 500 and 1,500
Yes.
zone.
Yep.
I'm happy to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Sure.
they're getting paid to build their time, and as soon as
Except for
they
the guy who's
Get
moving
it,
on.
and they're going
get
on.
that, then they move on to, better paying jobs.
Now, the other thing I was gonna say, Jeff was talking about connectivity with the other airlines. I think a significant factor with Cape Air's relatively good success is going into O'Hare versus Midway. Because transferring from Midway to O'Hare is not an easy
Right,
operation.
no, it's not, yeah.
It's not easy. You
You
got,
have to give yourself a couple hours.
you got
just
2 to 4
go
hours,
from one place to
either
the other.
way. Taxi, coach,
They have a
Going back
shuttle
in
that runs,
Chicago.
but it only runs,
yeah, it's
Like
when
on the
it
hour or
feels
something.
like to go, just like our taxis around here, So anyway,
They have taxis?
that's what I mean, just like our taxis
One here when I
around
pulled
here.
yeah, I was gonna say, we saw the one, yeah.
Just like our taxis around here. Barry, does that take care of it?
Yes, that is
Thank
the end
you.
of my report.
Okay. Okay, moving on to, old business, unfinished business. Something I mentioned at the last meeting, and we had it in the notes this time, referencing, contract for the board here with Barry and so on, and the operations here. So the first one is the airport director's contract, the second one is the Part 139 service agreement, and the third one is the FOB agreement. And I believe everybody had seen that on the computer or pulled apart. Everything, what was I gonna say?
I was gonna say, the only changes from the agreements from the previous year are updating dates and
That's what I was gonna
changing
say, right.
the, amounts by the budgeted 3%.
Correct. So everything should be ready to go for the changes. Let me quickly go through, like, the airport director's contract agreement. That's gonna move up to $4,120 per month, and that's a 3% increase. The fixed-based operator agreement is going to move up to, from $18.95 per hour to $19.52 per hour, that's another 3% increase. And the administrative, Part 139 administrative and service agreement is going to move from $14,010 per month to $14,430 per month. Again, a 3% adjustment. Everybody on board with what you're seeing and hearing? Okay, so, I'm thinking, do we wanna go through separately
They need
for,
to be separate.
okay. So if there's no questions and comments aside from what I've just mentioned here, I would like to go ahead and just move on through here, A, B, and C. First one being the airport director's contract as proposed.
I'll make a motion to approve the airport director's contract and, dated appendix A as proposed.
Okay. Do I hear a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. Susan, could we have a vote on that, please?
Sure. Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Dance?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes,
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes,
Mr. Suda? Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed as proposed. Could I have a motion for item number B, Part 139 Service Agreement? And with the same 3% adjustment on that. Okay, thank you. Do I have a second for that?
Second it.
Okay. Susan, could we have a vote for Part 139 Service Agreement?
Yeah, can you tell me who was the first one that agreed? I'm sorry.
Made the motion?
Karen?
Yes,
Karen did.
thank you, sorry.
right.
Did you get the second on that?
Ms. Kaminsky.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was right.
Mr.
No,
Hawes.
the second was Mr. Gentili.
Okay,
Sorry, okay. Mr. Hawes,
yes.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
yes,
Ms. Kaminsky,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes,
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 3, the fixed-base operator agreement. And again, the 3% increase moving from $18.95 per hour to $19.52 per hour. Could I have a motion to approve that as proposed?
I'll make a motion.
I'll support that.
Okay. Susan, could we have a vote on the fixed-based operator agreement?
Yeah, Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
yes,
Ms. Kaminsky,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
yes,
Mr. Suda, Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, new business? Any comments by the board members? Above and beyond what we've already talked about?
I just want to add, I agree with, Mr. Dance's comment on the connectivity, but I've flown through here twice now, and I will do anything to not fly through here again.
What happened?
Yesterday's experience, while they were able to get me home, I had to sit in the co-pilot seat. My flight was canceled. There was no communication between them and United again. There was no way for them to rebook me, because I booked through United. I called the number that they gave me. They were closed by Saturday night by the time I got to the email. When I got to the airport yesterday morning, United said your flight's not canceled, just continue on. I got to O'Hare, my flight was canceled. They could not rebook me because I booked through United. Called the number, I couldn't do it on the website. They could not rebook me on the number. They said I had to go to the check-in counter. They don't open until a half hour before they have a flight. So either everybody that was on that flight either automatically got rebooked or they booked through Cape Air. And they told me I might have to sit there until 4 or 6 o'clock. So I just rented a car and driven home faster. They were eventually very nice. I lucked out because there was one woman that had 3 little kids. So they were able to fit my extra weight on the plane, but the only seat left was the co-pilot seat. They originally had asked the lady to go up there. She was not comfortable moving up there at all. So I said I'd be more than happy to just move up to that seat. But it was, I get the luggage and that's huge, but I think at least my understanding of how they did code share and cooperated with United and American, I have not seen that at all. My first experience here, I flew through, they didn't communicate on baggage fees at all, my baggage was supposed to be free, and I ended up having to pay $90 for my bags. They don't communicate that when you already pay United or you get a first class ticket. And then yesterday, there was no communication between Cape Air and United that the flight was canceled.
That was, Cape Air canceled
Yes, and when
and didn't notify United? Is that what the issue? Okay.
yeah, 'cause the United, when I got to Nashville at 4:30 yesterday morning, they're like, no, your flight's still listed as going, everything's fine, you're, just go ahead on to O'Hara. So I was trying to find out if the United would just rebook me to Traverse City right there or do something. And they said, no, we can't do that because there's no indication your flight's canceled. And they said the flight was canceled because they didn't have a plane. They did have, because I had to sit there for 4 hours. Most of it, nobody was there, but part of it, the ticket counter guy and the pilot were there. So I did overhear quite a bit. And part of it was your frustrated pilot, because the ticket guy was making a lot of comments about the pilot that doesn't want to show up to work anymore.
They were even having that conversation in Chicago, huh?
Yep, because the kid in Chicago apparently doesn't like the guy's attitude and says how unprofessional he's being, so he says on his last day, he's not even gonna say goodbye to him. And the young kid, the young pilot, was saying how he's gonna probably go to the Quincy route because it's too expensive to find housing here. Stuff to do in Quincy than there is here. So you're gonna have that aspect of trying to recruit pilots for this route because there's not enough affordable housing here. It was quite an experience. I will say the end result, the kid got me on the plane. I got home only probably an hour or so later than I would have, but.
But you were sitting there for 4 hours and all that confusion and so on. I think anybody I would be pissed,
And you don't know, I didn't know if I was getting on the plane
right?
until they actually opened the door and said, okay, you can go on the plane.
Right.
When you arrived in Chicago, was it still on the
No, they don't,
schedule that it was still running?
they don't
when they
list
looked at
them. You have to get all the way down to Terminal L before you can even find any of their listings.
Right, but,
And
oh,
then
and
I
you
got
didn't do
down
that?
there, well, yeah, but I landed in F. There's no boards anywhere until you get to actual Terminal L that show you any of those smaller ones. And when you got there, it was canceled.
Okay, 'cause I had that similar situation where my flight was canceled. I was coming in connecting in with United, or American, I'm sorry. But it never showed that it was canceled or delayed on the board.
It was not just that, I mean, with the yellow one, Spirit, what a screwed up operation they've got right now. They were just, like, they had people packed in the Terminal L. They didn't have flight attendants, they didn't have pilots. That whole Terminal L was just a mess yesterday.
Chaos.
Well, they were in the news a couple of weeks ago also, weren't they, Spirit? They were, yeah.
And I felt bad for those people. Those people were just all sorts of upset at that terminal.
Well, it's kinda like, it's almost equivalent to going to restaurants. You better have patience when you're flying, or restaurants right now, because everybody's staffing levels,
There is none.
it's a nightmare. For any profession, it's a bugger. You know, the last time I flew, I was flying on, United, and it was a cluster when I left, and it was a cluster when I came back, but it all worked out beautifully. You know, you don't know until you actually are on that plane and you're going, but it all worked out the way, better than I anticipated, but there was times I had no clue how that was gonna turn out.
And the staffing, you're completely right. I can have all the patience in the world for that, but I would just expect communication between United and Cape Air to be a little bit better than it's been the two experiences I've had.
That'd be a good question for gentlemen next month.
I'm gonna, after this meeting, send him a link for this conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Some good input.
So moving forward, I know there's delays with weather in Chicago and different things like that, are we prepared here for weather?
As well as we ever are. I mean, generally, will there be weather issues?
Well,
Yes.
yeah, I'm sure there will be,
But-
I mean, are we prepared for that, like,
We are, I mean,
making
right,
sure the runways are clean,
we are-
de-icing?
we
Who does
are-
the de-icing? Do we do that?
Yep,
Yeah.
I mean, we have our de-icing fluid for the runways.
And everything, all that's
stock,
good to
yeah.
go, so.
I think over the last several years, I don't think you've had more than maybe 1 or 2 days where you've had a delay due to weather.
We've had really mild winters.
Right, but I mean, I'm going
Depends
back,
on what the weather is going to be.
I'm trying to think, like, even going back like 3 or 4 years, you know, from what, sitting on this board and so on, I don't think you've had more than like a couple days. Maybe like 3 or 4 through the course of the year, but never more than like 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember because there was one year we had some extra expenses because of the salt mixture and stuff you had to,
Not
Sure.
salts, but it's
well,
non-corrosive.
potassium chloride. Okay,
Okay?
anything else, folks? Thank you very much. See you next time around.
Can I stop you for a second? Karen, can you join for a second with Andrew? Couple minutes?
Sure.
Yeah, outside.